This is What's New Radio Extra Time. Each month, we share a longer interview with one of our guests in the energy sector on topics highlighting our services and our 100-100 vision for Barbados.
Our first guest is Chief Fire Officer Errol Maynard from the Barbados Fire Service, and he's talking to Manager Government Relations and Corporate Communications, Jackie Marshall-Clark.
Welcome, Chief Fire Officer Errol Maynard, to What's New Radio. I'm delighted to have you today.
I'm also delighted to be here with you.
I want to start by talking numbers. It has been reported that several of the fires for 2021 so far have been electrical, and this is an ongoing trend. So let's chat about that. How many fires overall, and how many of those have been categorized as electrical fires?
Okay. We've had approximately 402 fires for this year, and that's between the 1st of January to the 30th of March. 9 of those fires were electrical, and this is compared to 14 in the corresponding period last year.
Oh, okay. And what could be the main cause of electrical fires in the home?
Electrical fires can comprise of many different faults. One, you have faulty wiring, faulty appliances, faulty extension cords, and very often we use extension cords as permanent wiring, which we should not, and which is a problem. Extension cords are only supposed to be used as a temporary supply for a very short time, and not to use these strips that we use on the extension cord that will cause us a lot of problems because they break and then you do not recognize it, and then because they're having so many outlets, then we overload them. So extension cords and these other things that we faulty appliances, and these are the main things that we have in the home that will cause some fires.
And all those things sound so familiar. We always remind and give people tips about these things that, yes, we know can be a hazard in the home and can cause electrical fires. So what kinds of situations should we really avoid that may cause electrical fires? You did mention one just now, that extension cords are just for temporary use. That's one. What else?
We also should really unplug those small appliances when we're leaving home. And even if we're at home, the ones that are not in use, like your toaster oven, the air fryer, the television, electrical fan. As a matter of fact, the only thing that should be left plugged in is the refrigerator, because if you plug the refrigerator, then it would be disastrous for you because it will spoil up your foods and such like. But all the small appliances should really be plugged out when they're not in use. And
should that include the television as well?
As much as possible. But most of us watch television so often and so long during the day that it is a problem if you plug out the television. For me, I love television. I like watching westerns. So therefore, if I'm at home, I will always be on it, watching television and watching westerns.
That makes two of us.
Another thing that we really should do, a lot of us use these strips that we have. Now, you should really replace them with surge suppressors. The Barbados Light and Power generally will give us some clean electricity. But sometimes you might get a spike. There's nothing that is perfect. Sometimes you will get a spike. And if you have a proper surge protector, when you get that spike, the surge protector normally will take the hit and it will protect your equipment, and also it can prevent a fire. So it is good to replace all those strips that you have with a good, proper surge protector, something that has a UL rating.
Well, thank you so much for that plug, because I didn't have to say it this time, you did. And we always try to remind everybody, please get your surge protectors and get the right ones as well. One of the things I wanted to mention with the television and why some people possibly would decide not to unplug the TVs these days, because you have to reset every time you come back to the television and plug it in again. You do have to reset the television, so they may opt to leave the TV on. Mr. Maynard, I saw an article from you recently in the newspaper, and you wanted to remind people not to be charging all their devices in bed. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, especially during these days where everyone is at home during the COVID period, they want something to do. Then you have the online teaching and persons are always on their devices, their gadgets, the phone, and they have to charge them. It's easy if you're lying down watching television in your bed or wherever you to just plug it in and rest it there. But it is dangerous to do that because we recognize that all of these devices, when they're charging, they generate a lot of heat, and this heat can cause fires, especially if you're charging with a borrowed charger. What I mean by that? Now, your phone might have a charger, which one that is maybe a quick charger. And then you might borrow a charger from your friend because yours isn't working well. But if you do not use a charger that is specified for the particular device, it generates a lot of heat. It can damage the device and it can also catch fire. So you should always try to use a charger that is designed or is recommended for a particular device. The other thing is that if you keep them on your bed, it can get hot enough to cause a fire. If you feel your charger and you recognize it's getting extremely hot, it means that something is going wrong because the charger, they do produce some heat, but they shouldn't get extremely hot or hot enough to cause a fire. If you're charging your laptop, if you're even using your laptop on the bed, they need to breathe. And if you block the air vents, the way they should breathe from the fan, it will overheat, and that in itself can cause a fire. Matter of fact, if you leave to go to the kitchen and you leave it there, by the time you get back, it might be hot enough to cause a fire, and then you can't get back to it. So it's advisable not to place them in your bed. Place on a hard surface, something that will not burn, and some place that they can get some air as much as possible.
That is quite a bit of wisdom there for us. I particularly like charging a device with a charger that's not your own. I never thought of it. Thank you very much for that share. And I want to ask you further questions. This is a very interesting topic. What does an electrical fire smell like? If you're not in the room or not nearby, how would you identify maybe an electrical fire? What does it smell like?
Very good question. Now, we say that we classify a certain fire as an electrical fire, but it's not really the electricity that is burning. It is whatever component that the electricity is going through. So if your fan is burning, you will smell plastic, or it might be metal, and you get that pungent odor, but it's not that it's coming from the plastic that is burning as a result of the electricity. It is the metal that is burning as a result of the electricity. So to tell you what an electrical fire smells like, it would be difficult because it's not the electricity that is burning. The electricity is the cause of it was the heat source that led to the fire. And therefore, you will smell, if it is in your home, whatever is caught fire or whatever is on fire, that is what you will smell. And it can be very pungent. Generally, if you're like your fan, if you don't clean your electrical fan, when the dust gets in there and you know electricity generates heat, then you will generate a spark and your fan will start to burn. And then you will smell this funny smell, but it's not the electricity, it's probably oil that is in the fan and the electrical wires and the coating of the electrical wires that you'll be smelling, and then the outer shell of the fan that you'll be smelling. It's a very pungent smell, but it's not the electricity, it's whatever is on fire as a result of the electricity.
Okay, thank you for that. So, the device, the cell phone is in the hand of the children, the hand of the adults. There's the iPad, the laptop, and all these things now hard at work, like you mentioned, on the bed and all that. I have a question for you here. If your device has caught fire, what are 3 don'ts?
Don't panic. When you panic, you tend to do stupid things. So don't panic. Remain focused. Don't use water while dealing with an electrical fire of any sort. And if the device is plugged in, it is safe to do so. Don't forget to unplug it. So we have 3 don'ts. Don't panic, don't use water, and don't forget to unplug the device.
So are there any circumstances where I can put out a small electrical fire myself?
Well, certainly we can deal with a small electrical fire in the home. One, you can unplug the source, and once you unplug the source, de-energizes it, it will go out. Because it has no source of heat anymore, you can unplug it. Secondly, you can use an extinguisher. And all homes should really have a small handheld extinguisher. So you can use the carbon dioxide extinguisher, which is basically one of the better extinguishers to use on an electrical fire. It doesn't conduct electricity, so basically it's pretty safe and it's easy to use. Or you can use an ABC extinguisher, which is relatively cheap, readily available. Almost any hardware store you can get one from. And this can be used on any class A, B, or C fire. And the class C fire is one that we classified as an electrical fire. So yes, you can deal with small fire, but here I must caution you that common sense must prevail, because as long as that fire starts to grow, you need to know when to get out. It's too big for me. But I want to caution you again that even before you attack the fire, call 311. While you are actually dealing with the fire, call the fire service. That even if you do not get out at the end of the day, the fire service is already on the way.
Well, thank you. That brings me to another question then. How long does it take the fire service to get to my home in the event of an emergency? What's the process? So say I live in St. George and it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Tell me about that.
The fire service emergency vehicles travel approximately in peak time, that is in heavy traffic, approximately 1 kilometer per minute. And that is in peak time, fully laden with water and equipment. So if we work out that, if you live 15 minutes away in peak time, we will get to you in approximately 15 minutes. That is if all of the vehicles had to travel from the Bridgetown station. But if you live in St. George, we have a station in St. John, which is next door, and that's coming down. That vehicle does not have to go through the heavy traffic that we will experience in town, because we tested it during the peak hour. So that will travel much faster. So most of the fires within close proximity, we will get there within 3 to 5 minutes, 10 minutes maximum.
So tell me a little bit more about this. I want to see it in my mind's eye, Mr. Maynard. So it's going to get to me possibly about 3 to 5 minutes. So I place my call. And what is the number again? 311. You receive that call. Tell me what is the process and how it works on the inside of the fire station.
You place the call to 311. That call is answered in our dispatch center, which is located at the Archall Fire Station. The call taker will take all of your information, that is what the address of the incident, your name and telephone number, and this is to really check back to see if the call is authentic and verify any other additional information that we may need. It doesn't mean though that if we don't, when we recall the number and we don't get you, we will still respond. We have this policy is that when in doubt, turn out. So we will still respond to the area to make sure, just in case that you had to run away or the phone dropped or the phone wasn't working, got hysterical. During that period, there are 2 persons in the dispatch center. So when one is calling, he writes the information, give it to the other dispatcher, and he will dispatch the vehicle, the closest vehicle to your location. And the island is divided geographically into divisions and response areas. So we will turn out the closest vehicle to your area. While he's doing that, while that vehicle is on the way, he will recheck and validate the information. And while they're en route, he will call them and verify the address. And he may keep talking to you and ask you to look out for the fire truck if it's a difficult place to find. Similar to what you see on television when you have a 911 call. It's basically a similar operation. And once we get on scene, they will call and call back to dispatch and say, well, we have arrived on scene. If by chance we cannot find you, maybe something small and we don't see any smoke or any signs, and by chance we can't find you, the number that we took from you earlier, we will recall that number and ask you to go outside and show the guys or hail the officers that they will find you, or get a more specific landmark that we can find you. But we will find you every time as long as that call is legit.
And most of the time there is smoke or there is some evidence that you can see as well. I did hear you go through all your fireman days there as you share that information with me. Thank you so much. Is the fire service online? Are you on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook?
The fire service has a Facebook account, but we are not really have a presence there. We are now working with the Government Information Service to get all the different social media platform online, because we recognize that that is one of the ways that we can reach this modern clientele. The young people, they love the social media, so we have to get there to spread the information. We don't have the facility that we can take the calls or emergency using that platform as yet, but we can definitely use it to educate our people.
Yeah, and immediately my mind went there because as you told the story of the firemen and getting out and looking around and beginning to pull the hose and all that, I saw all those pictures on Instagram and Facebook, drawing me more to the firefighters for the work that they actually do.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it very much.
And we appreciate you. As an essential service, are you feeling the pressure during this COVID period to maintain that level of service that you've spoken about? Are you doing anything differently?
If I had to say that we are not feeling the pressure, I'd be lying. It is right there with us. But we had to recognize quite early that we have to do the same things, but find a different way of doing it. So while we still have to respond to fires, while we still have to respond to emergencies, we had to change a few protocols. We had to upgrade our PPEs to make sure now that much of our rules now, we have to go, for argument's sake, if we go to a motor vehicle accident and we happen to get there before the ambulance service, one of our protocols is to put a mask on the victim up front to make sure that we protect ourselves. All of our officers now have to wear masks on and off the station. We have to place dispensers with soap because we have a lot of water. Every vehicle is a lot of water, but we needed soap. So we put soap dispensers on all of the vehicles. We have sanitizer on all the vehicles, on all the stations. So we had to relook at how we do things. We also took the opportunity to see how many personnel we have on a vehicle at any given time. And we worked it out that we would need to reduce it to ensure that there's enough space while officers are on the vehicles. So we reduced the numbers on the vehicles and we reduced the numbers that are on duty at any one time. So even if we had to work a shift work, we reduced that number. The other thing that we did, we were able to change up the shifts in a way. So we changed up the shifts to make sure that one shift doesn't come in contact with the other one. And that worked well because that helped us with reducing the numbers that are on shift at any given time. So if we had a person who was infected, then he will not infect the whole shift or the whole station. So we reduced those numbers and that is working well thus far. So we had to do a number of things to get, and it's pretty expensive, but we had to do it because we really wanted to ensure that our personnel were safe and comfortable in their mind for them to be able to go there and to work comfortably and to save the citizens of Barbados. In addition to that, we also employed our chaplain to make sure that if any of the guys had any problems mentally, they were able to have some person to speak to and to relieve any stress that they may have had.
You will appreciate that much of that information shared sounds so familiar to me. As another essential service, we certainly understand. We did much of that to make sure that our guys were safe as well and that they were protected during this COVID time. And of course, that we protect their health as well as they go out to, like you said, do the work needed by our citizens of Barbados. So thank you very much for that. It was such a pleasure listening to you today. You know, we appreciate the work of the fire service. We appreciate all that you do. And of course, at Light and Power, the Barbados Fire Service is certainly one of our closest business partners when it comes to work in the community. You know, I am sure that you're pretty much one of the superheroes of the community. If I had to ask you, what superpower would you want? What would it be?
Not a very good question. Now, generally, a lot of people or the public see firefighters and the fire service as a profession of heroes and superheroes, but we don't see ourselves as heroes. We generally see ourselves as just the committed citizen, the committed worker who wants to do all that we can to save a life. If we had superpowers, we would want power to stop every fire, every emergency incident before it occurred. We will want to be like Superman, that we can hear it from a mile away and get there before any injury occurs. or before that little spark becomes a fire. We would want to see every person, every citizen happy and be able to reunite that little boy or that little girl with his mother or father or that pet, that little dog, that cat, which is in distress, back to its owner. We just elect as a hero to bring comfort and satisfaction to every person that we touch.
Well, I certainly like that, and I like that thinking. As a matter of fact, every time I see one of your fire officers now, I'm just going to see that little cloak behind, knowing that they're doing their superhero work and bringing people back together, saving lives, and making sure that that little boy gets his dog back. I thoroughly enjoyed that vision that you gave me there. So, Mr. Maynard, I just want to thank you very much for joining me today and engaging with me for What's New Radio. Again, we will continue to support you. We will continue to have a good business partner in the Barbados Fire Service. I want to wish you very well, not only with your work, but in this COVID environment as you continue to work and protect your people as they work for the Barbadian public. Thank you, Mr. Maynard.
And thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to work with the Barbados Light and Power Company. You are one of our main stakeholders.
Thank you very much.
What's New Radio?
My final guest for our April program is Marion Harper-Alleyne, teacher of the St. Giles Primary School and chairperson of Health and Safety at the school. It is great to see our schools becoming focused on such an important aspect of our lives. Hello, Ms. Harper-Alleyne. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I am well. And how are you?
I'm doing pretty well today. Can you remember the things you did as a child during April holidays?
I do, the holidays were always a welcome time, a break for the demands of school, homework, and other school tasks. It was a time for leisure activities such as reading, television, no homework, but for sure. During this time, the major highlight centered around kites. My favorite store-bought kite was the back kite, but for me, the do-it-yourself, make your own kite brought the greatest thrill with coconut sticks and brown paper bags or newspaper. Nothing could beat the joy and satisfaction of seeing a kite made with my own hands actually take to the sky, fly longer than a minute, and even better, be let out for a great distance.
So traditionally, Light and Power would normally send a safety poster to all schools for the kite flying season. But we are living in a new normal. So we thought we would invite you in to help remind the children and adults about flying kites safely. What are some of the safety tips you can provide for the children and adults?
There's nothing worse than for a teacher or any member of the school staff, actually, to hear that one of our students has been injured while trying to enjoy this national favorite pastime. So children, a few tips. Always fly your kites in wide open spaces. Check your surroundings before you put your kite in the air. Most importantly, fly your kites away from power lines and utility poles and large trees that have power lines running through them. Why? Because electricity can easily travel down your kite lines, and this can be very dangerous. Never fly your kites on days when there is rain or stormy weather. Kites can attract lightning, which can seriously injure you. And a final tip, never fly your kite near the path of an incoming aircraft.
And what about those kites that make that loud buzzing noise that keeps some of us awake during the night? Can anything be done about that?
Well, Akeem, those kites really do keep you awake at night. And one thing I can suggest is that one, the bulb, this little flap of paper can be removed from the kite, or children can haul in their kites at night or late evenings and then launch them again the next day.
And of course, if your kite gets caught in a power line, do not try to remove it. Call our emergency hotline number at 626-9000 and we will remove it safely for you. What about children playing indoors this holiday? Mom and dad may be back at work. What would be the safety rules to teach kids about electricity around the home?
These are real concerns that our parents have been sharing. And a few suggestions are One, teach the very young children never to put their fingers or any object into an electrical outlet, a toaster, or any appliance for that matter, even when it is turned off. You can buy safety plugs, parents, for outlets which are not being used. Store bathroom and kitchen electrical appliances like hair dryers out of reach of small children. And for the older children and young people, do not leave devices plugged in, especially on your bed or sofa. These include the much used and loved devices such as laptops, cell phones, among others.
Those were some excellent reminders. I want to add another important one. Always stay away from substations and power lines and never touch big metal transformer boxes with warning signs.
Oh, yes.
One final reminder before you leave us. It's also mango season and some trees are close to the power lines. Don't pick fruits near power lines.
I agree. It is very dangerous to use a pole or stick to knock down fruits, as it may get caught on a power line, which can cause serious injury or death.
Exactly. As we say at Light and Power before going to pick that irresistible fruit, look up and look around.
What's New Radio is broadcast on radio every month, or you can listen to past episodes on our website, blpc.com.bb. Find us on social media at BLPC Online or tweet BLPC. Our customer service team is always ready to serve you. Call 626-4300 during office hours or 626-9000 for emergency assistance.